Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi. Welcome to the first ever Convergence at the Confluence of Power, Identity, and Design. We're so glad to welcome you all to Gund Hall for a weekend of reflection, discussion, and action. As the current co-chairs of Women in Design, we'd like to introduce ourselves, the Convergence, and this evening's keynote speaker. My name's Adele York, and I'm in the Master of Design Studies program in Urbanism, Landscape, and Ecology.
And I'm Cynthia Dang, and I'm in both the Master of Architecture and Master of Urban Planning programs.
And I'm Sarah Diamond, and I'm in the Master of Landscape Architecture program. This convergence is meant to be a first step in a broad and concerted effort to reimagine design culture and bring the issues of identity and equity into mainstream design discourse. So many people have contributed their time, enthusiasm, and labor to make this weekend happen, and we hope that this collaborative spirit can inspire a new design practice and ethos. Addressing and acknowledging the prevalence of sexual assault and harassment is fundamental to the social transformation we believe necessary. However, that is not and cannot be the only behavior addressed. The design community must face and come to terms with, among other things, the deeply gendered values, conventions, and theories of our disciplines.
Now, to give you all a brief overview of the weekend ahead, tonight we will hear from our keynote speaker, followed by a happy hour co-hosted by Latin GSD and the admissions office. Tomorrow we delve into our key themes through workshops and panel discussions. We'll start off with a panel on power, split off into workshops on aspects of identity, and reconvene after lunch for a panel on pedagogy. Then we will hear presentations from student groups and organizations from all over the East Coast, describing the projects and conversations on identity and design happening at their respective institutions. We conclude with a panel on activism, followed by collectively building an installation to physically manifest our conversations.
Lastly, we'd like to thank our sponsors and the generous support of many individuals. From Harvard GSD, the Departments of Architecture, Landscape Architecture, Urban Planning and Design, the Development and Alumni Relations Office, Human Resources Office, the Office of Faculty Affairs, the Office of Student Services, the Office of the Dean, the Master Urban Planning and Master of Design Studies programs, and the Joint Center for Housing Studies. We also thank Haya Kader, founding principal of KZ Architecture, Rhode Island School of Design, NOMAS, and the Women's Leadership Initiative of Robert A.M. Stern Architects. We'd like to send a special thank you to all of the individuals, Women in Design Convergence team members, and collaborators who made this event possible. Also, the amazing support of Erica George and Jackie Piracini has been invaluable.
And now I want to introduce our amazing speaker tonight. This summer, I had the opportunity to work at the local nonprofit organization Mass Design Group, and that's where I met Jadi. As a senior associate there, she has worked on numerous projects, including the African Center of Excellence for Genomics of Infectious Diseases in Nigeria, the National Memorial for Peace and Justice to Victims of Lynching in Montgomery, Alabama, and the Oasis at Bartlett Station in Roxbury, Massachusetts. Not only is she a talented designer, but she is also a spoken word artist, an event producer, and overall space maker for LGBTQIA communities of color. Born and raised here in Boston, Jadi received her BS in architecture from Northeastern University, taught for 2 years at the Boston Architectural College, and then pursued her MArch-1 at the University of Pennsylvania. After graduation, she returned to her home city to continue curating and co-hosting the monthly open mic that she founded, the If You Can Feel It, You Can Speak It open mic movement, and she began working at Sasaki Associates. As a spoken word artist and event organizer, Jadi exclaims that there is pure art in speaking your own truth. She is dedicated to creating spaces for artists, particularly those within the LGBTQIA communities of color. As a designer, she urges that design and the built environment are vehicles for equity, justice, and social change. We are so thrilled to welcome Jadi here to kick off the Convergence. So give it up for Jadi.
Thank you. Before I officially begin, I would just like to clarify one point about my bio, because these things are important. I did not have the pleasure of working on the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. I wish that I had. Unfortunately, I arrived at Mass right as it was opening, so I did not work on it. However, I did get to attend the opening, which was an experience in and of itself. So I just want to clarify that for any records that may be being kept for this here talk. And I would like to thank you all for that lovely introduction and, of course, for having me here. So good evening, everyone. Good evening. Okay. Y'all sleep? Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Okay, that's a little bit better. I am a call and response person, and so I will call you out if you do not respond. So let's see. Let me actually officially begin here. Wow, I have never met a Black female architect before. You all? If I had $1 for every time I've heard somebody say that to me, I promise you I would not be working full-time right now. I'm so serious. And trust me, while I am completely flattered by people's response and this excitement and this reaction, I'm also terribly exhausted by it, right? And it's that exhaustion or the experiences around that exhaustion that I want to talk to you all about tonight. I'm going to share with you all some experiences of mine over the past 15 years. And through that, I encourage you all to have conversation with me. I encourage you to ask questions if they're burning. Otherwise, you can hold them until the end. But while I'm sharing these experiences and while I'm sharing these stories, there are 3 things that I hope you all will take away with you from tonight's talk. So the first of those is, how are you empowering yourself? I think that is a very, very important quality to have, to be able to strengthen and empower your own self. Does not give people the opportunity to take that away from you, right? The second thing that I really hope you all take away from this talk is, what is your why? And if you're writing this down, you should write why down in capital letters, because there's a point to that. So what is your why? What is driving you? What is your purpose? Why are you doing this? Why are you here? And then the third thing that I would like for you all to take with you is this notion of walking into every room, into every space with your whole self or all of yourselves. Meaning, do not leave any part of you at home or in the car or on the train. Just bring it all, okay? So those are the 3 things that I really, really hope you all are able to take away from what it is that I share with you all tonight. Does that sound good? All right, we're getting a little bit better on this response, a little bit better. The other thing is, as Cynthia so eloquently said, I am a spoken word artist, and so I'm going to tell you all now that I'm going to have a very hard time staying behind this podium. It's going to hurt my heart, but I'm going to do my best, because I understand that there is a live stream happening, there is a video, and I want to be a good steward to that. So, in order to share my experiences with you all, I suppose that I should start at the beginning. And with that, I will say, if you had the opportunity to read the article in Madam Architect that went out yesterday, thank you for the snaps. It was great. Thank you so much, Julie. I don't know where you are. Oh, thank you for taking the time to interview me and for dealing with my hundreds of edits. But if you read the article, then you already know that I was a MECO student. So I was born and raised here in Boston, and by being a MECO student, what that means is that I was bused out of Boston to the suburbs for my education, for all of my grade school education. And this experience was absolutely amazing. It gave me an opportunity to probably learn things anywhere between a year or 2 ahead of my cousins. But unfortunately, it also taught me at a very early age how to deal with cultural isolation and how to deal with being the only minority in the room. And it was not until later in life that I realized that this would be a problem, but it's definitely at this point where this started. So I was born and raised in Mattapan, Roxbury, Dorchester, but I went to school in Arlington, Mass. The other misfortune of me being a MECO student is that, you know, as an honors and AP student, as someone who's going to school with a lot of other students whose parents attended various colleges, my counselors, both the MECO counselor and the school counselors, assumed that I was okay. Not a lot of people checked on me. They thought, you know, she's here, she's doing well, she's, you know, in the honors and AP classes, she's getting good grades, she's fine. My mother also assumed that I was being taken care of by the MECO counselors and by the guidance counselors. Why is this a problem? Well, when it was time for us to apply to college, I had no idea what colleges to apply to, and that's mostly because I did not actually know what college was. And for some people that might be absolutely insane to imagine, it's offensive, etc., but that's my truth, that was my experience. I was a first-generation college student. My mother is an amazing, amazing woman. I really hope that you all have the pleasure to meet her one day. I'm not joking when I say that. She will make you feel like a rock star in about 5 minutes. But she, you know, had been living on her own since she was 14 years old. She was a police cadet by the time she was 18. She was a police officer by the time she was 21, and in between that, she had me. And so my mother did not go to college. She did not graduate high school on time, and so I had no frame of reference for what college actually was. Again, I was a first-generation college student on my mother's side of the family, and that's who I grew up with here in Boston. So while my classmates are applying to their parents' alma maters, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to go to school for. Obviously, you all can imagine that this is pretty embarrassing to realize that you don't know what you're going to college for, and you're a senior in high school and you don't even know what college is. So in true Jadi fashion, I like bust into my guidance counselor's office and I'm like, what school do I go to? And she's like, what school do you want to go to? And I'm like, I don't know. She's like, okay, what do you want to go to school for? And me, again, in my ignorance, I'm like, I want to go to school for school. I thought college was an extension of high school. I didn't realize that I had to choose a major, that I had to choose where I want to go. And so luckily she had the patience and the wherewithal to kind of work through this with me. And after a series of questions, she learned that my interests and that my preferences were in math, science, art, and traveling with my mom. So she suggested that, yeah, that's what I like. That's what I answered. So from that little bit of information, she decided that I should go to school for architecture. So that was her suggestion. And I ran out of the guidance counselor's office, went to the library, looked up architecture, spelled it wrong. How the hell do you spell that, right? Spelled it wrong, realized what it was, and immediately started to put myself into it. And I said, okay, cool. I can go to school for this. I can do this. So I started applying to schools that did not require a portfolio because I obviously did not have one. And luckily for me, I ended up at Northeastern. And it was at Northeastern that I actually finally understood what architecture really was and what it could be. And I also began to understand the social impact that it could have on society. Northeastern has a very urban design focus to its undergraduate courses. And you know, I've been saying for the past 15 years, if it were not for that experience, I don't know that I would still be here in architecture. It was also at Northeastern that I had the first, I guess, realization that I was a woman in architecture. Mind blown, right? It wasn't something that I had thought about, but one of our professors started a class. Her name is Moselle, amazing woman. If you all ever have a chance to go to University of Milwaukee, that's where she's teaching now. But she started a group for the other young women in the class for us to have space to have conversations about what it meant to be young women in architecture, and how that felt, and what we wanted to do and how we wanted to be agents of change in that. And it wasn't until these conversations started happening that I realized that I was, again, a minority in a space. So I thank her all the time for having brought that to my attention, because while some people may or may not have been discouraged or upset by that fact, I personally was delighted, because who better to change a space than the people who the space was not designed for, right? So I was fine with that. So anyways, let's fast forward. I had a great time at Northeastern. Go Huskies. I pledged Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I traveled and studied abroad in Rome. I went to all the parties. I made it to all of my classes. I had an absolute great time. Northeastern is a 5-year program because at the time we had 3 mandatory co-ops. So I was able to work in 3 different firms for 6 months at a time. And if you read in the article, I also intentionally did not work at architecture firms. So I will pause here for a moment to just kind of share that with you all. If you have the opportunity to intern in places, please, please, please try not to intern in an architecture office. I'm pretty sure there are some older professionals cringing right now at the fact that I just said that. Y'all will be all right. But I say that only because there are so many other places where you can learn the importance of design that do not necessarily have to be architecture firms. So in undergrad, I worked at an engineering firm, I worked at an interior design firm, and I worked for an architectural software company. And it was from those experiences that I really learned exactly what type of firm I would eventually want to work in. So after undergrad, I took 2 years off because I was burnt all the way out. I was exhausted. My hair was falling out, my nails were terribly short, all I could speak was architecture jargon. I was so culturally isolated because, again, I'm in all of these design studios and I'm the only Black woman in my design studios. And it was at this time, and I recently shared this with a friend of mine, it was at this time that I realized that Boston as a city is not terribly diverse. And again, for some people, you're like, duh, girl, where you been? But you have to understand, I'm from here, born and raised here, born and raised in Roxbury, Mattapan, and Dorchester. So my entire environment was Black. That was my family, that was my friends. And so, yes, I was bussed out to Arlington. I understood that experience, but I didn't realize how much Boston lacked diversity until I got to college, and this grade school experience of being the only person of color in most of the rooms continued. So again, I had to take 2 years off. I was completely unenthused with architecture at that point. I was overwhelmed by it. I had stopped believing at some point that it could actually make social change because, at some point in studio, it just has to be beautiful, right? Like it just has to be pretty. It just has to appeal to this random panel of jurors. And that really disengaged me in major ways. So what did I do for 2 years? I bartended. Because it was good money. I performed poetry because that's near and dear to my heart. And I also taught at the BAC. And it was while I was teaching that I really began to learn and understand what I did know and what I did not know. Because the moment you have to impart some knowledge on somebody, you will very quickly learn whether or not you understand it. So if any of you all are trying to understand your skill sets, go try to teach it to somebody else. Explain it to your grandmother and see how well you're doing, okay? So I was teaching at the BAC, and again, there are 6 design instructors. Actually, I'll pause here. I'll back up for a second. How I ended up teaching at the BAC is important for me to tell you all simply because it was one of those things where it was relationship-based. I created that opportunity for myself. It did not come find me. While I was at Northeastern, I was volunteering for their high school program where they were bringing high school students into the college. And in that time, I, gave it my all, gave it my best, did a great job, established a relationship with the director for first year studios. So he knew who I was. So when they opened the applications for instructors in the fall, I put my application in and he already knew the caliber of work that I had to offer regardless of my accolades. So let's fast forward to the first night of studio orientation. There's 6 of us. Of course, I'm the only Black woman. There's 2 other women. So I'm like, all right, sis, I see you. We in here. Maybe, I don't know. Okay, we're going to find out. But, because you don't know. Like, you don't know where your allies and your accomplices are until some things pop off. So anyways, we're up there. We're introducing ourselves. And I intentionally go last because I know what this is going to sound like. So the 5 of them get up and they say their name. They say where they went to undergrad. They say where they went to grad. And they say where they're working. And so everybody's like, ooh, right? So then I get up and I'm like, hi, my name is Janea Williams, and I am so excited to share with you all what I've learned over the past 5 years at Northeastern University. And that's exactly what they did. The entire room was immediately terrified. Like, I could see them praying to their deities that I was not their instructor. Like, I could see it happening. And I didn't care because I knew what I knew, and I knew what I was ready to share, and I knew what I was capable of. So I just smiled. And eventually they smiled back. Unfortunately, my gangster, if you will, my confidence was a little tested only 2 weeks into the course, because one of the students, who was about twice my age, got really upset at one of my critiques that his design was not broad enough. His conceptual design was not broad enough. It was very focused. It was very serious and streamlined. And I'm like, bruh, like, it's the second week of studio. Calm down. You're going to have to do this for a long time. Save your energy. But he was very upset at my critique. And he said out loud, I cannot believe that someone who is my daughter's age is sitting here critiquing my work. I have decades of experience in finance, and I don't even understand how you feel this way. Let me tell y'all, I had to call on all my ancestors, okay? Whew. I called them all in about 5 minutes. I put them on speed dial, group text. I did everything I needed to do to try to maintain my composure, and I pointed out to him. I said, sir, the difference between me, because he said, you know, somebody my daughter's age is actually what he said. I said, the difference between me and your daughter is that I have 5 years of experience in my architectural education. I have worked in 3 different places. I'm not even going to try to point out the differences between architecture and finance to you. And your age or my age is not important here, because I'm not teaching life lessons. I'm teaching architecture. So you have one of 2 options. You can either trust my experience, or you can delay your education by a semester. So he looked at me, and I looked back, because I was like, I still got ancestors on speed dial, bro. Try it. And he left it alone, kept drawing. I went on to the next student. The next week he came in and he apologized. And he basically said, you know, my frustrations with my career change have nothing to do with you. I should not have taken that out on you, and I sincerely apologize for treating you that way. And you know, I accepted his apology, and I told him, you know, let's not let that happen again. He ended up getting like a B- in my studio, and that's fine. But what was important for me in that moment, and what I want to share with you all, is you have to teach people how to treat you. If you don't do anything else in your encounters and engagements with other people, you have to teach people how to treat you. There are just things that I'm not going to tolerate, and blatant disrespect is one of them, right? Okay, so that was my time off in between undergrad and grad. And I also want to talk to you all briefly here about this notion of your why. I said that there were 3 things that I wanted you all to take away, and this notion of why is very important. So I'll back up for a moment. This empowering will be all throughout the thread, and I'll point to places where I'm giving you these, but like teaching people how to treat me obviously is empowering. You know, asking the right questions or demanding that my guidance counselor help me is empowering. I was not necessarily expecting somebody to bring this information to me. I was willing and able to be humble enough to go seek it. But going forward to this notion of why, again, if you read the article, one of my main things in life is to create a legacy for my mother. For some people, that is way too sentimental, that is way too sappy, it doesn't have enough glam and glitz to it. I don't really care. My main purpose right now in life is to create a legacy for my mother. I really value and appreciate all the sacrifices that she and my grandmothers made for me to be in the places that I am today, and I am determined to pay that forward to them by the things that I do. Right? So that's one of my whys. The other part of my why is to exhaust. And when I say exhaust, I mean exhaust my blessings. Whatever those blessings are, whatever those talents are, it is to exhaust them so that I can create space for other people. These 2 things are very, 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 very important for me. And I have these whys. I established these whys because it holds me accountable. I cannot tell you all how many times I do not want to get up and go to work. I do not want to go to XYZ event. I do not want to actively participate in a conversation. I do not want to say yes to something. And my why starts nagging at me, starts poking at me, starts probing me, because this is something that I said that I wanted to do, that I wanted to be. And that why is what gets me up. That why is what pushes me forward. So if you don't have a why already, please get yourself one. And I say that because my why is actually what got me to finally apply for grad school, and it's the thing that kept me from quitting. Well, actually, no, my best friend Patrick is what kept me from quitting, because he would show up to my house with coffee every morning. So I'd come downstairs for the coffee, and then I had to go to class. But y'all get the point. So my why is what got me in the groove of applying for grad schools. My attitude was, I started this thing. I have to finish this thing. And so I started applying to grad schools. I don't know how many of you in here, how many in here are applying or already students, or if you're thinking about applying, but I will share this with you. I applied to 7 different schools, to 7 different grad schools, and all 7 schools I applied to the dual degree program. All 7 schools, I only got accepted to 1 of 2 programs, which is great. At least I got accepted, but I was very frustrated. I was like, wait, y'all don't think I could do 2 things at one time? So I was a little discouraged and frustrated by that. And actually, correction, one of the schools, it was my 2nd time applying to it. I had applied to it the year prior and did not get accepted, and applied again during this batch of applications. So I ended up at UPenn, because I was interested in being in Philadelphia. And did I hear a whoop? Did we got Philly in house? Okay. All right, I see you, Philly, quietly. Philly's a little louder than that, but that's okay. So I ended up at Penn, and I was very excited to be there. I was very excited to be in Philadelphia. And unfortunately, I was immediately frustrated again upon arrival, because here I was, the only Black woman in all of my studios. And at this point, it was something that I began to embrace. I understood it as a moment of, again, empowerment, because I figured, okay, something has got to change here. Something is going to change here, and my mere presence is part of that change. My mere presence is initiating these conversations. Me being in this space, me sharing my experiences, me going out to different events and letting other people know that it is more than possible to study this particular major is what's going to start to initiate this change. So I did not take it as a burden, but I will say that it was very isolating, and it was very exhausting. And so I encourage you all to, throughout your studies, throughout your work, to find your tribe. If you're not going to get your tribe in your classrooms, find it in other places. There are plenty of organizations, events, etc., where you can find your tribe. And if you don't think your tribe is important, just trust me on this one, it is. It definitely is. So while I was at Penn, I had some amazing experiences. I met some really powerful people, not powerful in terms of their notoriety, but powerful in terms of the way that they moved throughout the world. I was able to establish some great relationships, but I also came up against several challenges. And one of them was a conversation that I had with a classmate. We were talking about the cost of books and tuition or something or another, and he asked me, he said, so do you feel like, the only reason why you have the opportunities that you have are because you're a Black woman studying architecture? It's such a non-diverse field. Do you feel like that's the only reason why, you're on full scholarship? Called my ancestors again. This time I called everybody's ancestors. I was like, y'all need to come get your boy. No, for real, y'all, because flames were coming out of every part of my body, and so I had to calm myself down so that I could relay what it is that I wanted to say. And with a smile, I politely explained to him, I said, no. I said, my opportunities are a direct result of me busting my ass and applying myself in every way possible, because I don't have the luxury to rest on my laurels or my privilege quite like you do. and his face looked like he hadn't called his ancestors. And so he immediately tries to retract and try to explain what it is that he meant. And that got dismissed with this notion about the difference between impact and intent, right? I was like, nah, I don't care what your intentions were. Here was your impact. You offended me. We now have a problem. So I walked away from that conversation. I'm pretty sure there are other things that I could have said, but I was like, I don't have time. There's not enough time in the world to fix that level of just stupidity. But these are the things that I was dealing with. And so that right there made me start to question whether or not my other classmates felt the same way, whether or not my instructors felt the same way, whether or not my family, for that matter, felt the same way. I was immediately more conscious than I had been about whether or not I deserved to be in that space. And that was not fair. That was not necessary. Obviously, I deserved to be in the space. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been there. And so that hurt for a bit. It definitely kind of derailed me for some time. And then eventually it just propelled me. It encouraged me to work harder, to work faster, so that when somebody did ask me that question again, I could come back with the same answer, because I know, and I want you all to know, the value of my work. I know the value of my presence. I know the value of my why. And again, nobody can take that away from me, regardless of their opinions. So I graduated Penn without having to bust nobody's behind. And came on back home to Boston. And the reason why I did that is, one, because this is where I'm from and I wanted to practice here. Too many people are transient here. They only come here for school and then they leave, or they grow up here and they go to school somewhere else and they don't come back. And I just did not want to be one of those people. I wanted an opportunity to build and develop here in my own city and practice the things that I had learned here in the places that I was from. And I also wanted to get back to my open mic. That is a very near and dear space to my heart. I created that open mic 9 years ago. Actually, next Thursday, we will celebrate our 9th anniversary. Thank you. And we will do so, we will celebrate our space also as being the only open mic dedicated to the LGBTQIA communities of color. And I started that mic, like I said, 9 years ago, because I personally was fed up with going into some of these open mic venues that you all may or may not be familiar with. And while I was being heard and respected in the space and they gave me my 3 or 5 minutes, I wasn't getting any love. And I'm an only child, y'all, so I need love, okay? I need hugs and kisses and flowers and I need all the love. And so I was trying to figure out, why am I not hitting? Why am I not reaching these folks? And then I took inventory, which is what I do. Anytime something's not going the way I feel like it should be going, I take inventory to figure out what am I missing? What is the gap? And I realized that I was performing in these very heteronormative, predominantly white spaces. And I'm like, child, of course they're not gonna give you no love. They don't know what the hell you talking about. As a Black queer woman, you going right over their heads. So I figured I probably was not the only person in the city experiencing this. I created the mic, and lo and behold, every second Thursday of the month, anywhere between 50 to 120 people will show up at my open mic venue, and we will go in and go hard and go home. So I wanted to come back home to that, and so I did. And when I got home, it was very hard to find a job, which I did not expect. I'm thinking, all right, I did it. I got 2 degrees, I taught, I got experience, I'm cute. Not that that matters, but that's how I was feeling. I was feeling myself, right? So I'm like, this is gonna be easy. Like, I got this. I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do these interviews. No, not at all. So many of the places that I was applying to, first of all, half of them weren't even hiring. I was just blindly applying because this is where I wanted to work, and I'm a person who feels like if you create the opportunity will create itself. And so I'm just applying. So half of them aren't hiring, and then those that are not trying to give me the coins that I deserve. And I'm sitting across from you, so I'm like, what did you just say is the salary? Do you know how long I just went to school? Do you know how much that costs? Oh, you are out your mind. So I was having a very hard time finding work, and I actually had an interview at one of the top construction firms here in the city, and a friend had recommended me, and so that's how I was able to get the interview. And I sat with the VP for about an hour and a half. And it was a great conversation, and he asked all the right questions. I asked all the right questions. It was great. We was grooving. And so 2 weeks go by, and I don't hear anything. And so I reach out to the friend of mine that had gotten me the interview, and I said, hey, have you heard anything? And she's like, yeah, I'm so sorry, but you didn't get the job. And so, again, you have to learn from these things. I asked why. It wasn't satisfactory enough that I didn't get the job. I needed to know why. And she's like, well, I know you don't want to hear this, but he said that, perhaps if you're going to do a job interview, you should take out your nose ring. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. What? I'm looking at the phone, and I was just so confused. Now, mind y'all, you see this hair, okay? Can everybody see the hair? You see the hair? I had the hair pulled back, right, which I normally don't do. Because I was like, let me pull this back so my hair is not a distraction. I put on the right, the business attire. I didn't go with my normal artistic clothing. I took my bangles off. I was like, we are just going to minimize the distractions, and we're going to focus on my portfolio. We're going to focus on my resume. And this person... Getting mad already, all over again, had the nerve to say I should consider taking out my nose ring. And again, this is one of these moments where I'm like, there are always going to be hurdles for me to overcome to be in this profession. Always. And at that point, I was like, you know what? Fine. Let's do it. I'm just going to embrace them. All the hurdles, let's have them, because they're clearly not going anywhere. I don't know why they're not going anywhere. I don't know what it is that I'm supposed to learn from them, but I'm going to learn something because they're clearly going to be here. So I got over that. I was a little upset because I was really looking forward to finally having some income. But I also decided that that was not a place that I wanted to work at anyways. If you were going to choose to see my nose ring over my experience, then I didn't need to be there. And so luckily, I was driving by what was the construction site of the bowling building in Dorchester. Do you all know this building that I'm talking about, the Boston Public School new headquarters? So I'm driving past there, and I dead stop in the middle of traffic. I'm pretty sure I pissed a lot of people off behind me, and I'm looking and I'm like, is this construction in Dudley, in Roxbury? How is this happening? Who is doing this? Because my entire life, I had never seen anything happening. No development, no redevelopment, no investment in this particular area of the city. So I'm like, no. I need to know who's doing this, who's responsible, what's happening. So me being the relationship-based person that I am, I started calling friends. And I was like, who do I know? Who do I know? Who do I know? Ended up finding a friend who was an iron worker on the project. She told me that the topping off ceremony was that Thursday, told me I should come. Fine, I will be there. It was a big to-do because, again, this is the first time something's being built in this area, and it's the Boston Public School headquarters. So I show up, resume and portfolio in hand. Hint, hint, carry it around. Okay, just keep it. You got your cell phone, resume, and portfolio. Bring it with you, all right? So I show up, resume and portfolio in hand, and I'm just introducing myself to everybody. I'm pretty sure people were like, what the hell is wrong with this woman? Because I didn't know who the architects were. I had no idea, but I was going to find them. And luckily, my friend kind of brought me over to them. She was like, you are killing yourself right now. And I introduced myself to two women, Meredith and Victoria from Sasaki, and I said, hey, listen, I'm so excited about this project. I think this is absolutely amazing. I've seen the renderings. I love what you all are doing. I just got back home from UPenn. I'm born and raised in Boston, and I would love to work at your firm. And I'm pretty sure the two of them were like, what is wrong with this woman? This is not how this goes. And in my mind, I'm like, this is how it's going to go today. This is how it's going to go for me. I don't know how it goes for you, but this is how I need it to go. And so bless their hearts, because I harassed them for about 3 weeks. I kept calling, kept emailing, before they were finally able to find time to interview me. And I get the interview. After 3 interviews, I get the job, and here I am working at Sasaki Associates, and I was elated. Y'all can clap for that. That's a big deal. It's okay. You can clap. I told you, only child. Only child. No, but that experience was absolutely amazing. And so I had the pleasure of working there for 4 years. And then I transitioned to Mass Design Group this past February. And I did that because I was at a point in my career where I was tired of defending the fact that our work needed to be equitable, that it needed to have a social justice lens. I was tired of that being happenstance, and I needed it to be a common occurrence. I needed it to be the thread with which we worked. And so when the opportunity came to work at Mass, I ran over to the Commons and was like, yes, please, let's do this, let's talk. So I've been there now since February, and I cannot tell you all how much happier I am as a designer, but I don't think that that opportunity would have presented itself to me had I not gone through these other things that I just talked to you all about. And so the last thing I want to share with you all is this notion, like I said before, of bringing your whole self into every room that you walk into. And why that's important for me to bring up now is because while I was at Sasaki, I absolutely loved who I was working with, and to an extent the work that I was doing. I did not love who I was at that place because I was leaving a lot of who I was at home when I was going into work. I was not an artist in that space. My name, if my mother calls it, is Janea Dianya. At Sasaki, I was Janea. They couldn't even pronounce it right. And that's not their fault. I never bothered to correct them, but I was Janea. Whereas now at Mass Design Group, if you go on the website, it says Jadi. And that is what I prefer to be. I prefer to be called by the name that I named myself, and I prefer to be acknowledged as an artist and as an architectural designer. And so I had the opportunity to reassess who and where I wanted to be as a professional as I made this career shift to Mass, and as a result, I am a much happier practitioner than I was before. The other reason why I find that to be important, this notion of bringing your whole self into a room, is because you have no idea how exhausting and taxing it becomes on your person, on your soul, to leave pieces of you in other places. And I understand that the workplace or the school is this professional realm, and it's serious and it's focused, but so are you and all of who you are. So you don't leave any of that behind. And 2 weeks ago, I was at the NOMA conference in Chicago. Yes, clap it up. You can clap. Come through with these claps. Yes. And that was very important. This is a sidebar. That was very important because I already mentioned to you all your tribe. Find your tribe, find your tribe, find your tribe. I cannot stress that enough. I had gotten to a place in my career where I was like, listen, I got my partner, I got my friends, I have my open mic community, I got my tribe. I'm good. It doesn't matter that I don't see myself in the workplace. Like, that's all right, I got this. I can see myself. There's mirrors. It's okay. Y'all, I got to NOMA. Oh, I did a dance, okay? I was like, yes! I was so excited to be in a room with like 400 to 600 other architects and designers of color. And it was just remarkable to just hear these conversations and participate in this level of activity. And there were parties, which was also important because you gotta relax as well. As hard as we work, you also gotta party. But I also had the opportunity, there are, by the way, only 444 Black female architects registered in the United States currently. I got to meet about 20 of them while I was at NOMA. So anyways, I was there, and I was asked to sit on this panel about gender, and the general topic was how our male counterparts can begin to show up for us in these professional spaces. And the gentleman facilitating the conversation brought up the fact that he felt guilty that he did not know any architects that were LGBTQ. He left it there. He didn't get to the IA. That was him, not me. And so one of the students stood up in the room and she said, well, I don't think that matters. I don't know why you have to identify them as such. Like you should gauge them by their work. What they did is more important than who they are. And I had to push back on that. And I said, no. I said, it matters who they are because history needs to know that they existed. History needs to know that they in all of themselves existed. And so when I walk into a room, be it a classroom, be it a boardroom, be it a doctor's office, be it whatever, I do the best that I can to bring my entire self into that room. My blackness, because I can't leave it anyways. My womanhood, because, you know, I can't really leave it anyways, but we all know that gender is a construct anyways. That is for another talk. I'm not going to go there. And my queerness, I cannot leave these things at home. One, because I do not want to exhaust myself, but two, and more importantly, because I do not know who else in the room needs to see all of me there. So with that, I thank you all for your time. Oh my God, sit down. My mother would be so happy. I should have taken a picture of that from my mom. Somebody give me a snippet from the live feed. So my understanding is that we now have 15 minutes for questions. Did I do okay on time? I was trying not to look at you so you couldn't tell me. But yes, questions. Please, let's ask them. Do not be afraid to ask me questions. I will not be afraid to answer them. Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's fine. Project. You got it. I believe in you.
So you've been at Mass since February, and
yes.
You mentioned bringing your whole self now for several months, which I really appreciate you talking about that, because I feel like there's a lot of identities that each of us bring. When you say that you gave yourself, you're called by your name that you gave yourself, and that you're being called as an architect and an artist, when you're interacting with others in those conversations that you have in Mass, how else are you bringing your whole self?
Right. I appreciate that question, because I don't want you all to think that I'm speaking in poem in the office all day, right? It's not necessarily a constant thing so much as it is a known and understood thing. So, for example, the Oasis at Bartlett project that Cynthia brought up in my bio, we had an opportunity to respond to that RFP. And at the time when the RFP was due, the entire office had just returned back from Montgomery for the EGI opening, and then all of our directors left for Rwanda for a retreat. So there was literally nobody in the office to reply to the RFP. And so myself and two other junior folks kind of at the same level as I did, we were like, no, we're going to get this done. And I remember blatantly slacking one of the directors, because he was like, oh, we're not going to get it in. Maybe you can ask for an extension, or maybe we just don't do this project. And I was like, no, no, no. I am a poet. I am a spoken word artist. I'm a community organizer in this city. I am not going to pass up an opportunity to design an outdoor performance venue in my own city. That's just not going to work for me. So we're going to get this done, and you're going to find some internet service on this mountain, and you're going to review it. And so it's not that I'm always having the conversation. It's so much that everybody in the office understands what my interests are, what my position is, and what it is that I want to be doing, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question? Okay, great. Next question. No, don't be shy. I won't bite unless you ask me to. Oh, can't see you. There you go. Oh, y'all heard that? Mic's still on?
Thanks for your talk. How did you turn your hurt into drive?
That is a really great question. I turned my hurt into drive. It goes back to my why, because my why to me is bigger than my hurt. My hurt is very real. My hurt still exists. My insecurities, my questions about whether or not I belong still happen. But my why is also still happening, right? Also, I read in too many books at this point, but life is, I don't know the exact quote, so don't copy me for this, but life is 90% what happens to you, 10% how you react. So I took my hurt and I was like, okay, I am hurt, I am pissed off, I am offended. What am I gonna do to ensure that this A, doesn't happen to me again, and B, hopefully does not happen to somebody else? Once I took it and I put purpose on the hurt has to shift, because now I have something else that I need to do with the hurt, right? So that's how I deal with it. And I eat a lot of chocolate. So real. And wine. Can I say that? Wine? That's the thing. That's the thing. Anybody else? You gotta wait. Sorry.
What's the time and location of the open mic?
Yes, for this question. So it is at the Milky Way in Jamaica Plain, which is right behind the Sam Adams Brewery. It's in between the Stony Brook and Green Street train station stops on the Orange Line. And it starts at 9:30-ish, depending on like how crowded the room is. But I highly suggest you get there around 8:30 if you want a seat.
And it's every Thursday?
Second Thursday.
Second Thursday.
Every second Thursday. So if you look up If You Can Feel It, You Can Speak It on Facebook, you'll find our group.
Cool, thanks.
Yes, you're welcome. I love that question. I get to do a selfless plug. There's a question all the way up here. Hi. Certainly. So sadly, I can't say that it has shown up in a heavy way yet in my actual design work, because for so long I was leaving it at home. I was leaving my experience as an artist, as a community organizer at home, because I was under the impression that it did not fit in the academia or the professional world of architecture. However, in terms of the way that I approach design, I'm very excited to share this story with you all. It is beginning to show up at work now. So for example, I don't remember when, a few months ago, I went on an interview for a competition. And for those of you that aren't familiar with MASS, we have this whole entire pre-design phase called immersion, where we really take the time and the energy and the resources to focus in on the communities that we'll be designing for and with. And we figure out and talk to them and ask them what their needs are. They learn about us, we learn about them. And it is from then that we're able to like develop the vision and then go into the project, right? So that is essentially what immersion is. I'm pretty sure some of my masters in the room are like, girl, you missed like 5 things, but that's okay. So that's what it is. So we were on this interview and we were talking about what immersion meant for us and what it could look like. And it was a 45-minute interview. And at the end of the interview, there's 6 or 7 of us sitting up on the stage, and I had not said anything the entire interview. So I'm pretty sure there are people in the audience like, oh, they just got the black girl up there just because, they need a black girl. So I'm pretty sure people were confused because I hadn't spoken. And towards the end, I got up unintroduced and I performed a spoken word poem. And when I tell you I completely changed the energy of the room, I completely changed the energy of the room. Everybody was awake, alert, and damn near in tears. And so immediately after I finished performing, I said, how does that make you feel? What did you just feel? Somebody said I feel heard. Somebody said I feel engaged. Somebody said I feel alert. And I said that is excellent. The way that I just shifted this space is one of the ways that we might be able to shift these spaces within this particular project as we start to do our community outreach and our community engagement. We can pull people into the conversation in different ways than we had before if we get a little bit more creative. So that's one of the ways that my spoken word poetry and art is starting to come into the way that I design. That was an amazing opportunity, and I never expected it to happen, but it was great. And it's actually somewhere on Facebook, I think. I'll find it and post it, and these lovely ladies will get it to you. But it was dope. Yes. Any other? Yes. Yes. Ooh. So the question, just in case you all didn't hear it, was the acknowledgement that I'm working to build a legacy for my mother. And then the question was, how do I do that without alienating the generation before me who has not, experienced that, who has not done that before? How do I prevent this alienation? And unfortunately, there is no way around that. And I've been talking to several of my friends who also have the 2 degrees and the professional this and the professional that, and we're all always talking about how, like, we don't know how to talk to our parents anymore. And it hurts. It's very frustrating for me because I'm an only child. My mother is a single parent. That is literally my world. And there are times when I know she cannot hear me. I know she cannot hear me. She does not understand half of what I'm doing. She doesn't understand. There's gaps. However, I still know that she's proud. So she can't hear me, but she can see me. She can feel me, and she can celebrate me. And that is all that I can really control. So the alienating, like, the ways that I choose to interact with my mother are on our common basis. When I go see her in North Carolina, when she comes here to see me in Boston, when we meet up in different cities, because that's a thing that we do now, I take her to different cities and we meet up. But when we do that, we talk about the things that we do have in common. We talk about my birthday, because that's like her favorite holiday. We talk about food. We talk about my hair and what color it is, and et cetera. Like, we talk about the things that do make sense to her. And that's it. Because if I were not to continue to alienate myself from her, unfortunately, because that's the process. She does not know what I'm doing. She's not been where I'm going. But if I don't do that, then I will never be able to get past where she is. And so I'm sorry, but there's really no way around it. So embrace it and figure out how to make it a little softer. Yes. Yes. Hi.
In the relation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I have 2 responses to that. And the first is, I've actually had that situation, both in undergrad and in grad. And I chose to take it out of the studio classroom, and I went to them personally to ask, is there something that you feel like I'm missing as a student that is frustrating you beyond the point where you are able to instruct me effectively? Like, is whatever I'm not doing right, is it that offensive to you to where you feel like as a professional, as a leader, as a potential mentor, that you're not able to connect with me? And it was very calm. It was very much out of genuine desire to solve the problem, and not necessarily like just coming at them, right? One professor gave me a straightforward enough answer, was probably like thrown off of his ass that I asked the question that way. And the other professor just kind of blew me off and pretended as if he didn't understand what I was talking about in terms of the way that he was treating me and regarding me. And so I was like, okay, clearly you're a brick wall. I'm not going to get through this. The second part of that is, whenever I'm having a hard time with somebody, if I'm not able to communicate with them one-on-one, I go and find an ally or an accomplice, if you will now, in that effort. And so I went and got another professor, and I said, hey, listen, here's the first problem. I'm not getting something. Me not being able to communicate with this person means that I'm probably missing out on some information. Can you help me to get to a place to where I can receive it? The second part of the problem is that I feel like it's personal. Do you have any recommendations around this? Hopefully that other professor, that other director or whatever, like whoever you find as an ally, hopefully they have more of a relationship with this particular instructor, and they can give you some insight into what may be happening. And so I would ask, do you have any insight? Can you help me with this? And then lastly, like, can you help me to figure out a way to get this information? Because at the end of the day, what matters is, yes, okay, you need the grade, right? Like personally, you can't ruin the relationship such that you don't get the grade that you need, which I personally think is BS. We will not talk about that right here. But more importantly, you need the information. And you have to do whatever you need to do to get the information, because this person is one person along a much longer career. So those are the things that I would suggest you do. And if all else fails, just flip a desk. No, don't do that, though. I'm joking. I'm joking. Yes.
Hi, my name is Kai. I'm here with my colleague Xavier, and we're the co-presidents of WIT-NOMOS at Wentworth. I was actually at the conference a couple weeks ago. Yeah, and I sat in a lecture from a lady who represented a school in Illinois. She discussed that she actually founded about 20 years ago a course on diversity in architecture. Do you believe it should be a requirement for every school to have it to be a diversity class for students in architecture?
Of course. Here's the thing. People are not going to necessarily volunteer to do the things that do not, in their minds, directly affect them, right? Like, they might start, they won't necessarily follow through. They might do it, they won't necessarily put their whole heart into it. So if there's an opportunity to just force their hand, why not? How else is it going to get done? So yes, I think so.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And kudos to her. 20 years ago, she better work. Here for it. Yes, all the way back there.
I actually saw you at the open mic in Bella Luna.
Hey!
And as a queer POC moving here to Boston just a few months ago, it was very hard for me to find community, so thank you for that forum.
You're welcome.
My question is, in your talk, you talked a lot about the lack of representation as a Black woman and as a queer professional. My question is, how do you see your role as a mentor in your professional work to elevate the voices of those two populations, and as you operate at that intersectionality? And then perhaps what we, even as students here at the GSD and our allies, can do in helping to elevate those voices of those populations as well.
Certainly. Great question. So again, there's like multiple answers to these questions. The first answer is to stay in the profession. That might sound obvious, but I've considered quitting a number of times. Like, there are many other things I could do to get my rent paid and still make my mama proud. So I don't really have to be here, but I choose to stay because I think it is important, one, that I'm here, that my voice is here, that I'm able to contribute to these conversations. But the second part of that is that, again, somebody else sees me here. So I think, part of the answer is to stay in the profession. One of the other things is to think strategically and very hard about how you can inform future generations of what this profession is. So, I have younger cousins, they have friends, I have the open mic platform, I perform at different venues in different cities and different states, and I always let people know that I am working in an architecture firm, that I have an architecture degree, that I personally know engineers and planners. Like, I make this information known because it opens people's curiosities. But then I also, I volunteer with several high school groups and career days and whatever. So insert yourself in these places where people are already talking to the younger generation and make yourself known, make yourself seen. The other thing in terms of thinking about how to solve the problem is, again, I'm so excited to be at Mass, and I'm not pushing Mass, I'm pushing my own personal experiences right now. But I'm so excited because I've been there. In being there, I had the opportunity to apply for Catalyst funding from the firm in order to start a fellowship at Mass that investigates why there's such a lack of diversity in our field. We all know that it exists. We know the numbers, but I want to figure out why. And so I have the funding now to start this fellowship to do this research, but also with the fellowship, we're able to offer opportunities to fellow with the firm for people who otherwise would not necessarily have an entry point into the field of architecture. So intentionally reaching out to communities that are underrepresented in this field is what we're going to do through the fellowship. So when I say think about critical and creative ways to increase the diversity, is something that you should do. Like that's one example of what I'm talking about, is basically how do you get more diversity to the table personally? Because the field, right, like the field, capital F, is not going to do it. It's just not. We are going to do it.
We have time for one more question.
Over here.
Oh, in the corner,
Over here.
Sure.
Okay, so.
Hi there.
You talked about expanding personally and in the profession. So I'd actually like to ask about. Sorry, can everybody hear me now? Mm-hmm. I'd like to talk about expanding diversity in the profession. And my question is whether the approach is, so in architecture education, there's a traditional way in which we learn, including use of precedent. And so one of the questions is, do we expand the canon? Mm-hmm. Incidentally, expanded canon project.tumblr.com, please suggest.
Oh, park it with this self-promotion. No, go ahead.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And the second question is, or is the approach to actually completely change the approach of the education? In other words, do we take the existing sort of template and then try to sort of diversify, you know, the way in which we use studio, the way in which we use crits, the way in which we use precedent, and expand the canon? Or do we completely rewrite, as in the example of using spoken word in, you know, in a community engagement context, do we completely rewrite that, or is it both? Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, and thank you for the question. I really wish I could remember this quote verbatim, but it's something to the extent of, you know, you cannot destroy the master's house with the tools that built it, or something to that extent. I'm pretty sure somebody in the room knows what I'm talking about. Google it, send it to me so I can say it out loud. You better work. I knew who it was, I just cannot remember the quote right now to save my life. But my point is, at some point, we are going to have to completely reimagine how we teach architecture, because inherently, whether it was intentional or not, although we know it was, inherently there's something about the way that we are teaching it that is not going to be able to fully reach the entire diverse population that actually should be learning how to do the work that it is that we're doing. So in order for the field to fully be representative of the people that it serves and the people that we should be working with and through and for, the way that the field is taught is ultimately going to have to change. How that change is going to come about, I do not know, and I'm not even going to pretend like I know, but I am more than happy to figure it out with folks who care about this. But yes, it can start, for sure, with something as approachable and tangible as changing precedents. Like, it blows my, I cannot tell you, like, they're just so many other buildings that we could be studying, so many other architects that we could be studying, and yet we continue to study the same ones and expect people to be able to see themselves in the profession. So there's scales to it, but ultimately, just throw the whole damn thing away, start over.